On June 2, 1981, one man walked into a bar in Lakemore, Illinois, and killed the owner and a female bartender. He wasn't a gangster, but he was tied to the most feared mob crew in Las Vegas. His name? Larry Neumann, a cold-blooded enforcer who even the mob was scared of. This is the curious case of a Chicago serial killer they called Lurch.
Trying to get me corroborate what he's got to say. His lies.
Lawrence Lurch Neumann was born in 1928 in Chicago. He came from a wealthy Jewish family with deep ties in the Windy City. As a child, Larry was known to be an arsonist in the neighborhood. He had very few friends, keeping mostly to himself. He was very shy in school, but very intelligent. Rumor has it, Larry had an IQ of 158. He was a genius. But he was also a psychopath. Known to have a short fuse, little verbal arguments would lead to physical altercations, sometimes even murder. Larry's first 3 known murders took place the night of June 8, 1956. Larry was alone drinking at a local bar in Chicago called Mickey's. As Larry was finishing his last beer, the bartender started closing down and asked Larry to pay his tab. Angry he was being forced out, he thought of an excuse to pick a fight. When the bartender returned Larry's change, Larry counted it and claimed he was shorted $2. The bartender refused to give him the $2. Larry left, he went to his car, grabbed a double-barrel shotgun, went back into the bar, and shot the young bartender. He then shot the barmaid too. As Larry walked out of the bar, a young innocent boy was walking home. Larry cocked back his shotgun and shot the young boy as well. After a 2-month manhunt, Larry was arrested. The judge had no mercy. Larry was sentenced to 125 years for the triple murder. You see, there are killers, and then there are people who live to kill. And Larry lived to kill. Larry was shipped to Stateville Prison. Because of his size, the inmates called him Lurch, a nickname that would stick with him for the rest of his life. The Stateville Prison set up a team of savages from the inmates they called the Goon Squad. These inmates were responsible for doing the dirty work for the prison guards. It was here that Larry would meet another aspiring criminal, Frank Collada. Frank was born in 1938 in Chicago. By the time he was a teenager, Frank was already committing burglaries and armed robberies. His closest friend? A tough kid named Anthony the Ant Spilotro, a name that would one day become infamous in the Las Vegas underworld. When Frank was arrested for armed robbery in 1968, the judge sentenced him to 8 years. He was shipped to Stateville Prison, where he would meet Larry. They both worked the kitchen and had ties with the prison guards. Frank would later state in his book that Larry even killed some of the inmates. Since the kitchen area was open to the inmates that worked there, Larry was free to roam all night. Let's just say, when inmates were found dead in their cells, Larry was the one responsible. Nobody cared. These were prisoners behind unspeakable crimes. Nothing was ever investigated, and Larry was turning into a serial killer. Frank Collada was released from prison in 1974. His good pal, Tony Spilotro, was already a made man with the Chicago outfit and was relocated to Las Vegas to handle and protect the skim money from the casinos. In 1978, Frank would also move to Las Vegas to help Tony. But Frank needed a crew. He needed people he could trust. He needed killers. He needed Lurch. Unfortunately, the Chicago justice system was corrupt as could be. Larry's father, Lawrence Neumann Sr., paid the parole board, and his son was free after serving 11 years of a life sentence. Larry Sr. would pass away right after his son was released. Sr. left a trust fund for Larry that was worth well over $500,000. Lurch now had the funds to help his psychotic behavior. When Frank returned to Chicago and met with Lurch, Lurch asked Frank if there was any work in Vegas. Frank told him he was looking to form a robbery crew. He also warned Lurch that he can't just randomly kill people. Lurch assured Frank that he would behave. Frank also had a tip on a Chicago jeweler named Robert Brown. He told Lurch to take care of this job for him, and he'll see what he can do as far as coming out to Vegas. Lurch and his partner, a man named Wayne Matecki, took the score and promised to give Frank his cut. Lurch pulled off the robbery, but not exactly in the way Frank wanted. In a later interview, Frank stated, 36 hours after the job, Lurch was at my door in Vegas. He was carrying an attach case. I said things must have gone well. He said there had been a change in how the robbery went down. I asked him what he meant. He said, well, I had to kill him. He told me that it started with Wayne going in the store as planned. Then Larry said, when I got in the store, I said, fuck it. I put my gun down and grabbed a machete that was hanging on the wall. I started stabbing him. I couldn't believe he turned a simple robbery into a murder. I told him he was nuts. I didn't dare say too much, though. Larry was a very dangerous individual. He feared absolutely no one. If I pissed him off, he was liable to kill me too. Even Tony Spilotro came to be afraid of him. By 1979, Frank had formed a crew of infamous burglars in Las Vegas called the Hole in the Wall Gang. They were responsible for more than dozens of robberies all over the city. The crew consisted of Lurch and his partner Wayne Matecki, who was also a third-degree black belt and a killer himself. Then there was Leo Gardino, a seasoned thief who was good friends with Frank from the Chicago days. The other members were associates Frank met in Vegas. Joe Blasco, a former Vegas Metro police officer, and Ernie DeVino, an associate that Tony brought in. Frank recalled one day sitting with Lurch at his restaurant, the Upper Crust. Larry got a phone call. He went to the phone, and when he came back, he was upset. He said some guy had put hands on his ex-wife in a bar back in Chicago. I said she wasn't hurt, and they weren't married anymore, so he shouldn't get so upset. Larry said what he did was a sign of disrespect to me. I've got to go back and kill the bastard. I told Larry he couldn't do that. It wasn't right. He still did. I got a call the next day telling me about a double murder in Lake Moore. A guy and his girlfriend were shot in the head in a bar. The following week, Lurch was back. I asked him if he'd killed those two people. He said yes. I told him I thought he'd promised me not to do it. He explained it this way. I thought about what you said, but couldn't control myself. I found out the bar this guy owned and went there. I asked the guy why he grabbed my ex-wife's neck. I was getting more and more pissed off. I pulled my gun and shot him in the forehead, and then shot the broad. I told Larry that the girl was innocent and supposedly had a couple of kids. All he said to that was that the kids were probably better off now. He was sick. On June 2nd, 1981, in a small town called Lakemore in McHenry County, Ronald Scharf, the owner of the PM Pub, and Patricia Freeman, a waitress on her first night working at the bar, were murdered. From police reports, one man walked in and killed the owner execution style and then finished off the waitress. The case went cold for decades. Lurch was never charged for the crime. But the feds were closing in. After a failed burglary in 1981 at Bertha's Gifts and Home Furnishings, the Hole in the Wall gang were arrested. Facing life, Frank Collada began to suspect something chilling. Tony Spilotro had set him up. In 1982, facing the real threat of death, either from the law or the mob, Frank made a decision that changed mob history. He flipped. Frank's testimony led to dozens of arrests. It exposed the entire casino skimming operation and helped convict members of the outfit, including top bosses. Frank even told on Lurch. In 1982, Lawrence Neumann Jr. was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, thanks to his old pal Frank Collada.
They've given this guy immunity for everything. 2 murders. Immunity for 2 murders. And like I say, he was gonna reveal everything against everybody. He can't. He doesn't know anything.
Frank fingered him on the Robert Brown murder back in 1979. Frank also told the feds about the 1981 Lakemore murders. When the feds asked detectives in McHenry County about the murder, they had speculations about Frank's story, and the case remained cold. McHenry County really dropped the ball there. 2 decades later, death came knocking. On January 9, 2007, Larry Lurch Neumann died of natural causes. He died in the medical unit in Menard Correctional Center. He was 79 years old. In 1986, the outfit lured Tony Spilotro and his brother to a suburban house in Illinois. They were beaten and buried in a cornfield. Frank Collata spent years in witness protection before re-emerging in the 2000s. He consulted on movies, wrote books, and appeared on countless mob documentaries. He also had his own podcast where mob fans would ask him questions about his past. The biggest question was always Larry Lurch Neumann. Frank shared many stories about Lurch. According to Frank, Tony Spilotro, considered by some to be the most dangerous man in Las Vegas at the time, once said of Lurch, "Whatever you do, don't ever unleash that bastard on me." Frank died in August 2020 from COVID-19. Before he died, he wrote a few books. Frank's book, Collata, The Life of a Chicago Criminal, Las Vegas Mobster, and Government Witness, detailed many stories about Larry Neumann, one being the infamous 1981 Lakemore murders. In 2009, thanks to Frank's book, the 1981 murder of Ronald Scharf and Patricia Freeman at the PM Pub in Lakemore was solved. Unfortunately, it was too late. Larry Lurch Neumann was already dead. His body was cremated and buried at the Evergreen Cemetery in Chester, Illinois. No one in his family ever claimed the remains. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think of the Lurch. Leave us a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications for more videos.